Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education and the assistant chair of the Music Education Department at Berklee College of Music. And I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is Rivky Grossman. Rivky is a New York City-based singer-songwriter, recipient of the New York Arts Grant, has been nominated for the IMEA Awards, and has been selected for the New York Musical Theater's top female finalists in 2022. Her song Hear Me Honey was produced by Grammy-winning Amy Lee of Evanescence. Rivky's music has appeared on PBS's Mysteries of Mental Illness. Her career jump-started composing for Off-Broadway, meeting her friend and cellist Brian Saunders, releasing their first album, inviting them to the Kennedy Center, and stages featuring Suzanne Vega. Other projects include co-creating a musical currently in development with playwright Vincent Grappelli. Rivky currently hosts Melody Left Behind, celebrating performers living with schizophrenia, psychosis, autism, and those who experience the stage just a little differently, pushing the boundary to welcome more neurodiverse inclusion on mainstream music stages, which often doesn't exist for every unique artist.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm your guest host today, and my name is Rivky. My pronouns are she, they. I'm queer, non-binary, light-skinned with auburn short hair, beautifully flabby around my tummy and hips. And thank you so much for joining us as we continue to celebrate and spotlight disabled artists. I'm a disabled artist myself, and I'll be speaking with disabled artists. And today on our segment, I'll be introducing you to Colin Farish. Colin Farish was born March 15th, 1961. From a very young age, Colin started imitating whatever he heard by playing the piano by ear. At age 4, he began lessons with jazz pianist Fred Bergen. He was especially drawn to the music of Brazil, and from age 4 to 9, he performed up and down the coast of California and in the islands of Hawaii, both on solo piano and accompanying his father, Warren Douglas Dent, a talented baritone. Colin is primarily a solo pianist and composer in the jazz and classical genres. He is also an accomplished acoustic guitarist and producer of world music and musical theater. Colin works in multiple genres, formats, and styles, from soundtracks for award-winning documentary films to original music for dance productions, from songwriting to live performances and recordings with Grammy-winning musicians. He enjoys composing for both small and large ensembles, especially chamber jazz. His songwriting also embraces political satire, humor, and spiritual philosophy as elements of musical theater. In 2007, he was awarded an orchestral commission celebrating the Aga Khan's North American visit, Coyote Jump, from Canyon Records, won a Native American Music Award in 2012. Colin, hi. Welcome to our show. We're so glad to have you.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about how you got your start. How did you get to where you are today?
Of course, well, first, I will, for our viewers, describe myself as the 63-year-old. I think I'm more pink than white, but kind of thinning and in relatively good shape from swimming, but definitely slowing down, white male in Mill Valley, California. And yes, oh gosh, my start was just, I felt so inspired by sound in general, and my mom used to tease me because my first language was onomatopoetic. Anything that made a sound, I would emulate. So when I peed, it was oh 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 oh. Anyway, you get the idea. There was a lot of sound, and sound was so intriguing, and the birds and everything. So I've just loved living in a world of sound my whole life, and I've loved how listening and extending and listening brings you into the world and brings the world into you in this very profound way. So sound and music have been continue to be a deep part of my life.
Hmm. Do you have any particular early musical influences that helped shape your music?
Yeah, well, so I had a
I mean,
big.
yeah, I saw something about you being inspired from Brazilian music, right?
Yes, well, that was when I guess it was in maybe 1967, so I must have been, 6 then when Stan Getz and did all the Jobim recordings, and that just blew my mind. That just gave me a swivel in my hips, and of course, all the adults in the '60s loved to hear it, and my dad would sing it, and the everything from kind of the well-known Ipanema to Quiet Nights and Quiet Stars, and just that whole album
Mm.
was such a mind blower. But early on, it was like so many kids being imprinted by the orchestral music from Disney's films, and then and
Mm.
then and then also, I was right in the heyday of the Beatles, and so when I discovered the Beatles, I put when the White Album came out, I put their pictures above my bed. I just loved listening to all the records, and I think the Monkees were kind of a gateway to the Beatles. I loved they had the TV show back then, and then of course Cream, and so I had but it was Blood, Sweat, and Tears with the horn section, and then later Chicago, because I felt like those were pop art bands that incorporated horn sections and started to flesh it out more orchestrally, and those were especially intriguing to me. And that's also why I love the Beatles and all George Martin's production.
Huh. Wow. You started so young too, right? Did you say like 6 years old and you traveled like the coast of California and probably other places, I think I read,
Yes, in Hawaii.
with your dad, right?
I did. My dad was such a great
Wow.
singer, and there was music in our household, and they had parties, and that's where I met Fred Bergen, my
Mm.
first piano teacher.
Wow.
And so I would just sit or stand. I was short next to the keyboard, and I was monkey see, monkey do. I just wanted to learn everything, and he was so generous and would slow things down, and he really got me from I don't know, maybe from 4 and 5, work getting independence in my left hand, so I could do these kind of ostinato figures or boogie woogie or whatever it was, and then play melodies in my right hand. So that enabled me to, from a pretty young age, start to play some of the great music of the day that I love so much. Cole Porter that my dad would sing, and
Mm.
and then Gershwin, which was such a revelation. I mean, the first time I heard Rhapsody in Blue, I thought that was the most beautiful piece of music I'd ever heard. And so,
Mm.
but by then I was maybe 11, and then I went to the library and just listened to Rhapsody in Blue over and over again, and would go home and try to pick things out on it, and I learned it by ear, also with some help of music teachers. But that piece had been, became such a part of my DNA.
Mm.
And then of course Richard Rodgers, all his musicals and Slaughter on 10th Avenue. It was a very orchestral way of playing the piano. It was
Mhm.
where you had a lot of stuff going on in both hands, and so that's. And then I think one of my greatest epiphanies as a teenager, I must have been maybe 15,
Mhm.
was the first time I heard Keith Jarrett. And then and he had so much freedom in his playing, and I felt like for the first time in my life I recognized the potential to have that sort of musical freedom and spontaneity,
Mm.
and that set my compass that I'm still to this day really delving into. There's a really cool website, keithjarrett.org. A lot of people have posted great transcriptions that they've done of his spontaneous compositions. And then also there's a great German transcriber, Yui Karcher, who's done a lot. And so there's almost like a support group of people that are great appreciators of Keith Jarrett's 40 years of recordings. And I still wake up in the morning. I'm so excited to go and try to learn and just drink in some more of these prodigious
Yeah.
performances of Keith's.
That's incredible. I mean, I can hear the appreciation and the delight in your voice, and it's kind of incredible, right? Like you started so young and you had such a plethora of like musical knowledge, and you still have this kind of delight. And
I
and
don't
it's,
think it
yeah,
ever
sorry,
ends.
go ahead. It's incredible. Yeah, it just sounds like, you have such a wide knowledge of music from such a young age, even before you attended any arts education, right? And then you went to school and then, right, like took on even more, right? It said that I read that you studied classical music at the Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara.
Right. Well, it was I had grown up with so much freedom in music and playing by ear that when I went to the more traditional ways of learning, my joke I used to joke with my friends. It felt like we were being classically chained. It was sort of like there was this. It felt like a reducing into
Mm,
to read the note on the page and play it, and then of course it was a just a marvelous way to be able
right.
to play complex music with a lot of other people. But I
I've
felt
never heard that before. Instead of classically trained, you were classically chained. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I broke out of my change. I felt like my whole life I have really played more like a blind musician in the sense
Mm,
of just it's such a hearing art that making it just so all about listening and also having the familiarity with playing the piano and other instruments and being able to just close my eyes and play and tune into the listening field or the space that we are all participating in co-creating in together and so I felt like I wasn't so interested in going down that very rigorous, which I have great appreciation for, path of classical training, classical chaining, um, because I felt like it was
mm,
so much more inspiring and fulfilling for me to be together with other musicians that shared a similar passion for spontaneous composition and
mhm.
listening deeply to and letting things emerge from that listening space.
Yeah, it sounds almost like that was a meditation in itself for you to have that freedom to play. What was your first album like? Like what genre?
I was invited at 15 to play on Paul Cyprus's album. He's a Czechoslovakian guitarist and classical
Mm,
guitarist, and so I I was thrilled to. That was my first time to go in the studio and playing the piano, and I also just had got the Polymoog, which was the first polyphonic Moog synthesizer, so you could actually hit some chords, tenths and voicings, and so everybody
mhm.
was sort of really thrilled about that. But I really was the most keen on being able to contribute piano tracks to it. In the end, I think they only used the Polymoog tracks, but it was a big seller in Czechoslovakia back in
Pretty
'76.
cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, at 15, hey.
I know, but I was a little let down. They didn't use my piano parts, but I
Oh.
I think in retrospect, it was all about the guitarist, and I think he just wanted
Right,
stuff to show him off, which I understood.
right, right. So your first love is piano, even though you play a number of instruments, right?
Yes, that was my first instrument I started playing really at 3. My mom said before I could walk,
Wow.
I started picking melodies out on the piano, and it was that's a funny story too because
Mhm.
I couldn't get everything because I thought there were only white notes because my hands were small. And it wasn't until somebody showed me that there were actually black notes that was my first big
Oh.
blow my mind epiphany, and then that made it possible to pick out more melodies.
I mean, that's pretty cool. There are certain cultures that, have particular like, don't even have, right, like, particularly the black notes.
Well,
I mean, I can't really think of
well,
any
exactly,
specific.
the modal music when I moved to, India, when I went to India in, 1979,
That's right, for a 3-year period, right?
and yes, and
Of
learning
total immersion.
yes, and learning,
Wow.
Indian music, the sitar and the ragas and the talas, and I love that too because that was so, spontaneous. They had, it's like a little form went a long way, but it became a vehicle for great spontaneous music creating,
Mhm.
specific for even times of day. So there was like ragas for the morning and the afternoon and the evening. The very sophisticated tala rhythms. The first time I was really hearing, I heard Take Five from Dave Brubeck back, so I knew there were some other time signatures, but not like sevens, 13s, 17s.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm,
not these
mhm.
like super sophisticated unfurling rhythmic patterns. So I felt like really that my time in India, I did a lot of listening, because
Yeah.
and then also started to plink around on the sitar. But it wasn't until later when I came back to, um, California, that did I really put more energy into learning the sitar from Ashwan Batish and from Ali Akbar Khan.
Oh, wow, wow. Do you think that maybe you took some of that knowledge that you had from the sitar and applied it to the piano, like similarly to the way in which you played as a kid with those white
Yes,
piano
right,
notes,
right.
right?
The
Like, if
world, the
fast
world
forward and like, look, there you were.
exactly. It's just
Right, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
inspiring, just to broaden our musical horizons. There's just, and I think that is my advice, that I give to younger students and things is, they say, well, what should I practice? I said, you just play what you love. If you really love something,
Mhm.
you're going to practice and play it and learn it. So it's like gravitate towards that which you are most passionate about. It's like music is such an enormous, out of grasp of the mind, enormous world of
Yeah,
possibility. And so,
yeah.
to be able to find, and express our own uniqueness of what we are the most fulfilled and inspired to do, it is really, I feel like, the most meaningful. And this is
Mm.
where I think the classically chained world, there is an inherent kind of destructive comparison that happens where, like, and I participated in these. I've even organized like music competitions
Yeah,
where all these people are going to play these, etudes or concerti, and you're going to compare, and you can say that person's the best. So
right,
so it's like we're
right.
trying to fit ourselves into this illustrious tradition of profound,
Mhm.
inspiration in music, but it's not for everybody. It's like some people can gravitate towards it just very naturally, and have no problem navigating that. Others, and this is where my disability. I have a CMT, which is a one of the 43 MDA diseases. It's a peripheral neuropathy. It's a slow progressor, comes on at adolescence, but it definitely affects, for me, mainly my, feet, and my where I wear leg braces, and
Mhm.
just have some, referred pain. But it also can affect your hands, and less so because I'm using my hands so much. But I have lost some muscle mass, and even back then, I realized that, some of these really intensely complicated classical pieces were not the best for me to try to fit
Yeah,
my hands to try to play them. It was it
yeah.
was better for me to be more of a composer, and find and discover what fit my
Mhm.
hands and my heart the most to express.
Yeah. Yeah, you actually you led me right into the question I was about to ask you, which you partly just answered. I was going to ask you, how were your experiences and are your experiences with as a person with a disability? And it sounds like it's kind of shaped your music as it progressed. Yeah.
Yes, but I think that it was something we talked about when just in our pre-podcast conversation about
Right.
how important it is to be so gentle and befriending of yourself at every stage
Mm,
of your life, because
mm,
there is such a sadly a common kind of self judgment, and, like, as I say, destructive comparison, where we're comparing ourselves with others and then we put ourselves down, which is this diminishing and withdrawing and contracting, and that
yeah,
is
yeah.
so counterproductive to enjoying our life, and to really having every possible moment that we're in this body on this earth as fulfilling and joyful as
Hmm.
possible. And
Yeah.
so often we are really doing this to ourselves. I like that saying that really one of the arts of living is to quit seeing what's not there and to see what is really there.
Mhm.
You know, and
Mm.
I and for me, with the disability, that has been the great blessing in disguise, is that I felt like
You found your strength in it.
as it has gotten progressively worse,
Uh-huh.
I feel like my interiority, my inner world has opened up and been more expansive, and I've felt this greater sense of not only compassion for myself but compassion for everyone, because we're all in the same boat. So some of us might just have a our expiration date might be sooner than others for either
Mhm.
physical
Thank you.
or just our whole
Yeah.
bodies. I love that saying. In fact, I put it in one of my songs that if it's possible to live each day as if it's our first full of wonder and our last full of gratitude.
Yeah. So we're going to listen to a clip from one of your songs. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, it was a concert, solo piano concert I gave in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco in September, and yeah, it's a good segue. I'm trying to figure out what to entitle it, but I think I may just call it "Overflowing Gratitude." So, yeah,
Yeah, I got to listen to a little bit of it. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's yeah. You can explain it, but I I
you
felt
must
so I felt
have
so calm after I listened to it. I felt like I was in a spiritually awakened space,
oh,
but
well,
really peaceful.
thank you.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful day in Golden Gate Park, and the sun was
Mm.
out. It wasn't too cold. I never know about those gigs when they put a big piano out in the botanical garden, because if it's too cold, then you can still play, but everything gets really slow.
Yes, yes, yes. But wow, what a treat to play there.
It was really fun.
Colin, are you currently working on any projects or has there been something especially meaningful for you recently?
Yeah, so during the Flower Piano concert event that lasted about 10 days, my dear Brazilian pianist friend Jasnam Daya Singh, who's been nominated for a Grammy, he came down and we recorded some two piano recordings with a great shakuhachi player and also a sax player. And so I have two albums that I've done with him of my compositions, and one solo one that I'm not sure which ones yet, but some of them will be coming out on Mesa Blue Moon, the label, in 2025. And also, I'll submit it to the Grammys for next year too.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll be sure to check that out. And finally, Colin, might you have some advice you'd like to share with some of our younger disabled artists out there who might just be starting out?
I just think that it's so important to be kind and gentle to yourself, and really have self-care and compassion, and realize what a beautiful being you are without doing or expressing anything, just being. And then from this deep place of self-care and compassion for yourself, it radiates out for compassion for everyone else. And then from those moments, whether you're playing a one-stringed bouzouki or composing for symphony orchestra, it doesn't matter. It's like it's going to be an expression of your joy and your life and your love, and that's what's the most important, to live a meaningful life. It's not trying to be something that you're not.
Colin, I feel like you're, part musician, part spiritual philosopher, and offering such beautiful advice from your experiences. And I feel it coming through, and I so appreciate your wisdom and your knowledge through the years.
Well, thank you.
It's been such a pleasure having you on our show, and thank you so much for making the time today to speak with us.
I just think it's so wonderful what you're doing, and I really look forward to listening to the other podcasts and other artists that you're interviewing too.
Indeed. And to follow more of Colin's, actually, I have the wrong one here. Colin, would you like to share where people can find more of your work?
Sure, it's just my name, www.colin, Colin Farish, FARISH.com.
Great. And thank you all for tuning in to the Able Voices podcast. Please do join us next time to hear the latest on these wonderful up and coming artists living with disabilities who are currently making incredible change and impact right now in the creative industry. And here's to looking towards a future where disability and arts culture is simply just part of the norm. My name is Rivky, and we'll see you next time.
Able Voices is a production of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berkeley.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berkeley, that's LEE.edu.